exploring a backyard greenhouse of a residence in suburban Adelaide, and it's home to arguably the most intriguing plant species in the world. John Yates is the passionate bloke who lives here, and he has spent a good part of his adult life collecting and breeding his carnivorous plants with an insatiable appetite. John, how did you start collecting carnivorous plants?
Well, when I was quite young, I saw a program on TV and I saw a Venus flytrap, and I just said, I have to have one of those. And that's where it started, some 30 years ago almost.
John, this is amazing. What have you got in here?
Well, I've got a huge amount of nepenthes that are endemic to Borneo and around Malaysia and even through New Guinea.
Now, these are commonly called the pitcher plants, aren't they?
That's correct, yes.
What are you doing here?
I'm actually going to pollinate this particular flower from a Helianthera.
Okay.
It's quite unique because they're pollinated what they call buzz pollinators. So they have a wasp come in when it's a very young flower like that, go in there and buzz, and that pollinates the actual flower in there.
Okay. Now, I believe you do a bit of plant breeding, so how do you mimic a wasp that needs to pollinate the flower?
With a tuning fork.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, I grab a little container like this.
Right.
And this is going to be very difficult to see. And I bang on here, and you can see the pollen. Very fine white dust. And then I grab a little brush, and I dab it in there. And I get just a little bit of pollen on the end there.
Wow.
And then I put it on here, like that. And you can see already it's starting to change colour.
You can already tell that that's pollinated just because the tip's gone black.
Yeah.
That's wild. And you've mimicked that little wasp.
That's correct.
That's incredible.
And we have pollination.
Now, John, there are so many different types of carnivorous plants and they all have different ways that they work. What have you got here?
Okay, we've got a few different varieties here, Sophie.
And are these what they call sundews?
That's correct, yes.
Right.
There is the sundew family. This particular one uses a very, very sticky leaf. You can see how sticky that is.
And of course, this is the Venus flytrap.
This is the famous Venus flytrap. You can see the hairs there. There's 1, 2, 3 hairs.
Right.
And the animal or the fly or ant or whatever it is has to actually touch 2 of those hairs for it to trigger the trap. So we'll try and do it, see what happens.
Isn't that incredible? So if it touch one, it's not going to go
I'm going
up.
to touch 1, it's not going to do anything. I touch 2, and there it goes.
It's going.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So I guess the fascinating thing about these plants is they're designed to attract insects, which then fall into the liquid, which I believe dissolves them. Is that right?
That's correct, Sophie, yes. Up the top here, there's a little lump there, and that produces the nectar. The nectar falls down onto the peristome. So the ants come along here and crawl up there and feed on the nectar, and then they fall in. The enzymes in here slowly dissolves them and it feeds the plant.
Wow. There are literally hundreds of native and exotic species to admire, and they attract their food in many different ways.
This one is called Loei. It's endemic to Borneo in the highland regions, and it's just a fascinating plant. This produces exudate, and the animals come up and feed on it.
Right.
And while they're feeding on it, they actually go to the toilet in here, and that's why it's called the toilet pitcher.
Nature is awesome, isn't it?
But you can actually taste that exudate if you want.
Really?
Mm.
After you.
You have a go. Go on, be game.
Okay.
It's not so bad, is it?
It's actually sweet.
Yeah.
It's obvious that John has mastered the art of growing, hybridising and breeding carnivorous plants, and boasts around 600 plants at present. And he's even walled off part of his shed where he experiments using tissue culture to grow plants. Your passion's taken you around the world seeing them in the wild, hasn't it? And you've been to Borneo how many times?
I think about 5 times now. I think if I'm going to grow these plants, I'm going to need to know how they grow in the wild and then come back here and try and emulate it.
So you've actually been trekking through the jungle of Borneo, you know,
Yes.
cliffs and everything to see these plants, haven't you?
Yes, that's right, yep. Some of the mountains we've been up have been very, very challenging. I didn't make it on a few occasions because they were just so challenging. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but I want to go back again.
I've really enjoyed exploring this other world that John has created, and his story just goes to show how a passion for plants can create a really amazing and fulfilling experience in your life.